Okay, this is a photo taken from an ancient site in Felsberg, Germany. And we are in Sacsayhuaman, and what we see is not simply something similar, but exactly the same thing.
Con las mismas herramientas.
With the same tools.
Exact same tools, exact same cutting pattern. But this is in Peru, and the photograph is from Felsberg, Germany. And it's the Temple of Thor? Templo de Thor in... yeah, the Temple of Thor, with the ancient god of thunder and lightning in Germany. This, on the other hand, is of course magnificent. Sacsayhuaman. So again, the three time periods are Hananpacha, Uranpacha, and Ukunpacha. And this is the eldest. This is of the Hananpacha period. The huge stones that are carved out, they seem like cement that have been shaped out of soft stone and then hardened. At least that's the theory of Jesus Gamara and his father. But this is a splendid example of the Hananpacha ancient, very ancient culture here at Sacsayhuaman. This is Ukunpacha. This is of the period of the Inca. Very well built terraces, the andenes. But then right next to it, we have this. And this is from the Hananpacha. This is from the ancient, the first world. Ukunpacha, the third world, including present day. But this is Hananpacha. This is much more than 10,000 years old. We have the seat, the three thrones that were adopted. The center one was the seating place of the Inca. The one on the left, the Koya, and the one on the right was of the premier Virgin of the Sun, the Nustra. In all examples of the Hananpacha culture, beautiful straight cut lines into what I have probably overly said is the living rock. But where the planes meet, it's never sharp 90-degree or even any other degree angle. The joins are always curved. And you find that not only here, but also in other examples around the world, including in Egypt, and also, very controversial, but I don't care, also the Temple of the Rock in Jerusalem, which is the holiest of holies of both the Jewish people and of course the Muslims. You see a very fine example of the Hananpacha culture. And this is one of the great mysteries, this massive stone, including a stairway, which is broken away from this beautifully smooth surface here. And I'm hoping that Jesus can explain what has happened. This part of the stairway here, which you can't see from this perspective, but it was originally attached right there. And this one obviously was connected there. But when did this big stone break away from the wall?
No lo sabemos, pero los incas ya lo encontraron así.
The Incas, they found already like this.
Oh, it was like this when the Incas came. So it was at the time before the Incas, probably during a great cataclysm,
just like
that this happened.
It comes like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you see where the attachment was here to to there. And we also see where the attachment was here to there. So this is like a very narrow stairway enclosed that went up to there. And this is actually where the tunnel was. This stone fell down before the Incas arrived, but they knew of somehow that there was a tunnel here. It begins here, and there are flights of stone staircases that go down, and then they lead, the tunnel leads to the Coricancha, which is more than 2 miles away from here. Okay, the famous slide, which is a solid piece of stone, is way off in the distance here that you can see. And the famous zigzag line or wall is way, way off in the distance, way over here. But we are on top of, this is the Great Chincana. And everywhere you look, there is an area that has been carved out. Not just one area, but it's the whole thing. That's what the whole thing is. And of course, many people will say that it's all a case of natural erosion, but then how do you explain this and that? And over, it's the beautifully smooth plain surfaces are just all over the place here. And I'm not an archaeologist, but or a geologist, but just by looking at the weathering patterns here, there's no way that this could be 500 years old. It's just and no one can explain the technology involved, that how the Incas could have done this with the so-called technology that they had at the time. This is not the work of Bronze Age man, or even Iron Age man. So you see these beautifully cut out and polished areas here.
Tenemos que bajar.
We have to go down.
Okay.
They don't allow it.
We're not allowed to be out there. But I'll keep the camera rolling because we did want to see what were clearly the cutting marks of some kind of human, or let's just stick to human technology. Whether it was another alien or what, who knows, I don't know. But just astonishing, again, the curves at the corners, they're not sharp angles, they're always a gentle curve. And we see this also at Ollantaytambo at the Temple of the Condor. And here we are outside the Coricancha. This is the great curved wall, and we're on the inside of the great curved wall. And this is just such, you know, I'll just keep my mouth shut and keep the camera rolling here so you can have a look at just the sheer beauty of the construction.
Esto es lo que te decía, hay un momento del día cuando el
When
sol
the
está
sun comes like that, the sun just only gives the shine just only in these parts, and all of these parts is very dark. These parts, all of these parts are dark, and this part is by the sun.
Oh, these
illuminated by the sun. Just only these parts.
Oh, they shine.
Yes.
It's a sequence.
Oh, wow, yeah. Notice the sequence of protrusions that Jesus and Nilo have just pointed out. they aren't random. There's an obvious pattern to this wall because when the sun would rise, it would strike this wall because this would not have been here. But one more time, I want to show you the series of nodules that stick out.
Y esos de encima no son redondos, no rolls.
So again, this is on the curved inside of the Great Wall at the Coricancha. And you see the protrusions, they aren't all just circles, as Jesus has pointed out. Some of them are rectangles, some of them are circles, some of them are oval, some are square, but there's a whole series of them. As if, as Jesus says, as if it's some kind of code. And when the sun would rise, it would strike these points and create some kind of pattern. But we'll never know what that is because this massive church of Santo Domingo is now blocking the path of the sun. So this series of protrusions obviously are symbolic and are not in isolation. Together, they have to say something, whether it's a code or whether it's a mathematical language. But the sun would strike them as it rose in the morning and create some kind of pattern. And there's a reason, obviously, why the builders created this wall specifically as a giant curve, because much of the rest of the Coricancha is quite linear. This is later Spanish work. So you see this pattern of nodes here and holes. They're obviously not in a random order. It must be some kind of code or mathematical language or star map or something. There has to be a reason why all of these protrusions are in this one area on the backside of the Temple of the Moon and are not found on the rest of this wall. So this is the Temple of the Moon inside the Coricancha. And again, here's the technical perfection. And people say, well, this joinery is superficial, but as we go around the corner, where there has been damaged, you see it's still perfect. It's still perfect here. And it's still perfect. And still perfect. And then this mysterious so-called doorway that has these holes drilled into this hard andesite stone and these odd channels. The conventional explanation is that this is where a curtain was placed because it was a sacred space. But who's going to be drilling holes into this super hard stone simply to hold up a curtain, no matter how ceremonial it is? And again, this is interesting because you can see the work of the Inca. You can see where the little white areas are. This is where they did a repair inside the Temple of the Moon. They were obviously great caretakers of the parent culture that came before, as anyone would be, take care of that which the ancestors had built. But again, all of these mysterious holes and channels that are carved into this door, which isn't a door because when it was intact, nobody could have climbed through it. And you can see where it's been broken. This is above the Templo de la Luna, the Temple of the Moon, and Jesus has just pointed out these very interesting channels and grooves that were carved into the top surface of this original structure. Are they solar markers, or he doesn't know, and I certainly do not know. And here you see these little circular and rectangular protrusions, lots of them, and grooves. Again here on top of the Temple of the Moon inside the Coricancha. They could be sun markers of some kind. I want to go back over them one more time. This is the original top, probably, of the Temple of the Moon here inside the Coricancha. And then I pull back so that you can see what the whole structure and enclosure looks like. Again, here you see these groove lines and then it changes from grooves to these amazing circles. Here in more detail, the top of the Temple of the Moon in the Coricancha. You see this series of rectangles and lines to the left, which changes to circles. And then from circles, it stops, and then there's one line that goes all the way down with all these perpendicular cut marks into them, all the way along. And then at this corner, you can't really see from this perspective, but then there are 45-degree angle cuts in, and then the cuts continue along and disappear on that wall. Sunrise is about here. And also the Pleiades at certain times of the year would rise here as well. And the Pleiades would be seen through this narrow hallway. And again, this intriguing series of rectangles of different shapes and sizes becoming circles. And then the circles becoming these cut marks, going all the way along through there. This is the original top. All of this above is Spanish addition. Brilliant observation by Dr. Arlen Andrews is that this is not the scale model of Machu Picchu. It's not the scale model of a city. It's actually an engineering teaching place where multiple examples of engineering principles, especially the movement of water, are expressed.
Wish it weren't so worn. This thing has got to be very old. Especially look around the top. If it was damaged or if it were just worn. Some of the areas, like on the side here, almost like there were bowls that have been broken off.
Yeah.
There are containers around the edge that have been broken off.
Right.
We'll take some more measurements and do a couple of tests.
Yeah, and there is that top channel right at the very top of it. So.
Okay.
Yeah,
one more.
Any one more?
I think one here. I think I'll do one more in the middle.
This could very well be water channels.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm going from the very top, maneuvering down, emptying, and pouring out at the lowest point. Okay.
Okay. My poor hand. These right here represent a system, I think, called fingers, calanoles, or something like that, on the other side of the mountain, on the Altiplano, near the sea. They were used by the ancients for agricultural irrigation, but it turns out that it was only discovered in the 1970s how they were used. They're only 8 to 10 inches, 12 inches deep. When you put water in there, it creates a microclimate about 18 inches high, and you can grow tubers and other things in that. They started using it again in the 1980s. It was an ancient thing. It produced enough food to support the large population that used to live out there. And that's what these represent. The rest of what everything else represents, we'll have to find out.
Yeah.
Oh God, here comes a whole crew. Shit.
Whole crew of what?
People. Turistas. Actually altered this stone when it was being used. You can tell here they've laid another layer of a different material here to alter the characteristics of this channel. So, in my estimation, they were at least tweaking and maybe doing actual experimentation. And I think the whole thing is to experiment with water flow and demonstrate water flow and design water flow. So occasionally it wouldn't be unusual to find a place that they say, oops, we need to go back and tweak that, just like engineers do today, back to the drawing board, except here it's a large stone. They didn't have three-dimensional CAD systems back in the old days, that we know of at least. But they did have this three-dimensional CAD model here. It's like a computer-aided design. And that's why I maintain that I highly suspect that they used liquid mercury that would scale down and act as water does on the scale that you're using here.
Right.
Unfortunately, so many places have been broken apart. It's been chipped off. I doubt that the original people did that, because it looks ugly.
Yeah.
And a lot of the zoomorphs, the animal shapes, have been broken.
Yeah, especially the heads of the pumas knocked off.
Yeah, you see over there, we see lobsters, we see pumas. What I was looking for today, particularly, was perhaps something like this that would have been a dome. And they carved it out and ran water through it to do some things like siphoning. I wouldn't be surprised to find, if we had enough time to look at this, or look at our drawings or our pictures later, that they do the concept of a siphon.
And so what you're saying, for those who are non-scientific, is that mercury was used because this is a scale model.
Yes, mercury will replicate the properties of water on a scale model, whereas water won't. Water has surface tension. If you've ever filled up a glass with water totally to the top, you get a little meniscus on the top. The glass is actually higher than the water. The water is actually higher than the glass because of surface tension. And water molecules hold it that way. So if you try to take a river that's a mile wide and scale it down to this, and you try to pour water through it to replicate what the water will do, it's not going to work. You'd have to have, the best shot you could do would be to use liquid mercury.
Uh-huh.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, I'm going to pour water. There is a bowl in the top, the size of a soup bowl, or a little bigger. Pour the water in and see where it moves.
Here it comes.
Okay, I'm not seeing any from over here.
It's just, oh! Just puddling here. We have to have a lot more water than that.
Like some more?
Yeah, pour some more. Just pour it all. Let's just see. Okay, I'll tell you, stop there and let's pour some. Here it comes. Just let this one go for a minute. Let's pour it in the other bowl to your left. Is there another bowl over there to your left?
There's a channel right here.
Okay, let's try that one. It's coming down in two different directions.
Yeah, it's a channel. It's not a bowl.
Oh, here it comes. Collects here.
The other one's still flowing.
We discovered that water flows downhill.
Wow, it's just amazing.
So it puddles there for some reason. But
all right.
And here it comes. Down into two places it splits.
Yeah.
We can now try it on the flat place there.
Okay, we'll do this one.
Yeah, let's try that. Oh, it's just, that's not doing, that's fine. It does flow, but